I've gone ahead and I've trimmed my feed line and stripped the enamel from the wire. Next, I'm going to do a slight deviation from the kit that was provided by the gents over at CAHRTENNA, and it's just personal preference only. The kit they provided is perfect. I like to do soldering of connectors that do not have the plastic sheeting on them already. So I'm going to set this aside for future use. And I'm going to put some shrink tubing on first, then crimp my connector and solder it. So I like to grab the very bottom of the barrel of my connectors and squeeze them on, and then that creates a little bit of a gap on the top side for solder flow. I also like to let the wire come through a little bit. Muscle, crimp, let's go. Okay, crimped. Let's solder. All right, that built in nice. Let's go ahead and get that heat shrink shrunk. And that quick, we're up to speed. And now we're gonna cool down. What do you think of that? Let's get this in place and get our wing nut on it. It's still hot. That's what needle nose pliers are for. Is that pretty or what? What we're going to do now is cut one of our two wires here so that we can feed it into our ground lug. Remember, we have a ground lug sitting down here with a hole in it. That gets one of these two wires. We'll also scrape some of the enamel off of both wires back here where they're still touching. So when we solder into the ground lug, we're soldering into the ground lug and the two wires together, and we'll cut back here so that we can separate the small piece of wire off. You'll get it here in just a second what I'm doing. So let's start by figuring out which of the two wires we're going to cut. And I think I'm going to cut this one. One of them, not both of them, or you got to start all over. And we have success. All right. And we're also going to cut back here. And now we can separate. All right, so this wire right here, this single short piece is going to feed into our ground lug. Let's scrape the wire off of the end of this wire and then between the two so that we can get these two soldered together along with the ground lug. And I have this at very low speed. I know you can see that my finger is close to it. Safety first. For a second. Third. All right, now I'm going to get the enamel off the longer wire. And I think in this case, I'm actually going to use the knife because I cannot get that Dremel tool in exactly where I need it to be. Let's feed this wire through the ground lug. And I'm going to pull that ground lug away from that piece of plastic because we're going to be soldering onto it. There we go. These wires retwisted back together again. I'm liking that. That's totally encapsulating that ground lug. That's good, good, good. I did move the wire in my toroid just a little bit, so we'll reposition that. Get that just a little further away from my frame here. I don't want to damage the frame. There we go. Now I'll tell you what I'm thinking here, since I'm manipulating this so much. I'm thinking that I'm going to put this connector on first and get it set because I don't want to be stressing this section here too much to position this one. So we're going to get everybody set here at the same time before we solder either of the two joints. Let's get an approximation on where we want to cut this. I'm happy with where these wires are located. Can't make it longer. Do I need shrink wrap on there? I don't. I'm just, you know, it's the way I am. Let's get that one soldered, then we'll shrink wrap it, put it on the machine screw, and then we'll come back here and solder this section. And you can see how it filled in that gap like I mentioned earlier. Yep, you're probably struggling to see that, get against the blue background. And yes, that's as hot as can be on my left hand. Look at that. Lovely. Cool down. All right, that should be cooled off enough for us to go ahead and put that in place with our wing nut. But just in case it's not. Ah, yeah, it is. All right, looking good. Now, let's just take another look here at how we're going to solder our ground lug to our other two wires. I do want to loosen this just a smidge. I want to pull this wire away from the frame. There, that's good. That's good. Good, good, good. That's what I want right there. All right, hopefully I have enough enamel scraped off. Let's solder the living daylights out of that. We're going to go on both sides of that ground lug, by the way. I stripped the enamel off of both sides, so we should be good. All right, we're looking good on that side. Now on the other side. That is a big blob of solder. That'll serve us well when we go to put our capacitor on.